Hi, in the last video we talked about understanding the map size and level size. In this tutorial I'm going to talk about how to use the save unlock map area and how that relates to the different materials that you have. So we're back in the default downloadable content. You remember last time I showed you how to switch that to use a different map size, but for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to use the same size as the downloadable content, which is a 50K map. And so let's have a look at the save game object. We're going to just zoom in here. So these are designed to allow the developer to drop these into the scene anywhere they like and place them. And what this looks like is it is just this object here. Oh, I want to talk about one thing real quick. This is what you might want to do is you might want to set up a player tag. I highly recommend it. It's not in this downloadable content, but if you set up a tag on your player, in this case called player, you were to connect this here to here, true, and then it passes through. What that'll do is if you have some other object in your game and it's just randomly passing through your save unlock map area, you don't want it to trigger this save game slot. Okay, so in essence the way this is set up right now, it doesn't have this connected. Again, I highly recommend you use it. I've kind of set it up here so that you can implement it. This just comes through does save game exist? If it doesn't, it will create one and it saves that map slot. This works independently of whatever you may have already put into your game, if that's the case. And if one exists, it will load that save game slot, and you'll be able to determine what you can actually see. So back to this save game object. The way this works, I'm just going to delete this extra one here. The way this works is as the player runs over it, there's an unlock map integer, and this is connected to your materials and what it will reveal. So as it runs through here, as this game map, just come over here, as this game map is loaded, which as it is opened in the UI, it looks for a save game object, and if it doesn't find one, it creates one with the default index, which is 0. And what that 0 relates to is your material map. Sorry, here we're going to go back to here to the materials. We're going to look at the material map, and this is essentially, this is saying we're going to allow the user to see everything, and so that's how this is hooked up. And we look here, if when it loads the save game object, and it does exist, it's going to say, hey, what index number am I on? What's saved? It's going to call that up, and it's going to say, okay, gee, the player can see everything. So we're going to use that option 0, which is the 0 integer, and it's going to say, okay, well, let's use the entire map. If we run over this and this is set to 1, it's going to say, hey, we want to use this material, and it has a mask, which we talked about in the last tutorial, making masks for your level reveals. It's going to read that, and it is sorry for jumping around here. This is a little bit of a complicated part, but it is going to read this option here, and it's going to put that in the brush material, which you will see in your map. I hope I'm making this clear. I'll go over this one more time. Essentially, you set your map integer here, and if we run over this right now, if we play this, we will go into our map and we can see the entire map. Okay, so we come back out. Now, if we play here and we run over this object, remember this save game object is set to one integer. If we hit our M key to launch the map, you can see that what it's done is it's now calling up the material instance 1, and we can only see part of that map. In the default downloadable content, it is set to 0, and that is so you can see the entire map. So as you go through here, you can set another area, say this one, to map integer 2. And as you saw in the overview map, if we climb up here and go over that and we go into our map mode, we will see just this second, the first plus the second set of areas on the map. Essentially, the way this works is as you want more map areas, you create more instances of this material. I recommend that you name it the next one 0.0, 05, 06, 07, etc., etc. And then you hook them into the game map, which is this right here, and you simply add more options to add an option pin here, and then select your material instance, and that will flow through here. So for instance, if you had a save game object set to 6 and you added, you had 6 pins in here, and that flows through here, and it says, hey, the player can see up to level 6, and there you go. So that is in essence how the save game slot works and how it relates to the materials. I recommend you play around with it a little bit to get an idea of how that all works. It's not as complicated as it may look, but it will be potentially a little bit tricky. Oh, and by the way, if you come into the map UI, which is I just want to go over this real quick. If you come into the map UI blueprint here, which we talked about in the last video with the user variables, there is one variable here, which is the map speed. This simply tells the map how fast to scroll as your cursor moves to the top and the bottom, so you can adjust that. I wanted to go over that. The other interesting thing I left in here was in the red areas, this is all the debug information. If for some reason you wanted to print that to a screen, you can see what I've done here, and you can kind of reverse engineer how this has all been done and see these debug variables in there. I left that in there just so if you wanted to learn from it or put that on for any reason. Okay, so that will be all for the save game objects for now, and the next video we'll talk a little bit about the game map UI and how you can put different buttons in here and kind of expand upon this setup. Thank you very much.